Not
Write-
unless you're
write a
moving
script.
into, not unless you're moving into my house.
Well, I could write a script. I could write a script with OAuth to you into your Google account and upload them to, maybe we need to write some automated tools. Why not? That's the way the world works.
That's interesting. Okay. We're in, we're recording.
So just for future reference, which is the right link for future?
This one.
495.
It's 951913495.
Yeah, that was the previous Thursday one. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, Doug switched to the alternate one for Sundays after he ended Thursday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Whatever he ended, Thursday and Friday, I guess.
And
So
I think
how
for the
Both of
record,
those, Doug,
I'm sorry, say again.
do you own both of those Zoom accounts in your own name?
There are rooms under one Zoom account. Yeah.
Oh, you have, oh, really?
I can designate a different number for a particular event. I can't have multiple rooms open at the same time,
Okay, so you have two numbers.
but I have multiple numbers. Yeah.
actually, Barry, I think the way it works is when you start something, Zoom assigns you a new number. And if it's a recurring thing, then that number stays.
Well, that's if you have the paid system, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
got-
it is a paid account.
Yeah. And let's see. But you didn't upgrade to the one where you have the real-time closed captions, though, do you? Or maybe
You know something, there has been upgrades.
I'm going to request it and see if you have a.
I can enable that,
Yeah.
and it is now enabled.
Oh, so you do have it. Fabulous.
And I see text at the bottom.
Yeah.
There you
It's real.
go.
That's real time.
Not perfect, but it is there.
Yeah. Sam, you didn't subscribe to that or activate it if it's free.
I think there's one, I probably have the same level as Doug. I just haven't enabled it because ever since I signed up, a lot of new features have come by and I haven't.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
And I believe, okay, view full transcript. Now, we don't need to see it for it to be generated, so I'm actually going to turn it off in terms of visibility.
Actually, it might be helpful for Barry because he likes to read things.
Is that helpful for you, Barry? Because I can leave it on if you want.
Actually, I think it's visible or not per viewer, not for everybody. I think once you've got it turned on, you can view it.
Aren't you seeing it now?
I'm seeing it now. Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah, so it's visible to everybody.
And it also gives
And
you
I can, if it's tough to read, I can also increase the font size.
Yeah. By the way, you can move it to the top of the window. You can move it anywhere on the window. Just mouse over it and drag it anywhere.
And hang on.
I did see it, but now I don't. Oh, I see Colin Kilburn talking at the top. Be quiet.
And you can open up the scroll back on it too.
I only see my own talking. That's what I'm seeing. It just says Colin Kilburn is talking. It doesn't show what it's saying.
Well, now if I talk, you'll see what I say. Maybe.
There's still no speaker identification.
No, there's no speaker. That's really strange because it could theoretically do that.
It absolutely could do that.
There's
It
no
just
reason.
said Sam Hanna is talking at the top. Now it says Colin Kilburn's talking. It's doing speaker authentication, but I'm not seeing the text. I'm in a different mode.
It's
I
not
don't-
marking up the transcript itself.
No.
In a different window.
Let's see if I go to the scroll back. View full transcript.
No, maybe I'm not looking at the right. should
So
be
yeah,
fine.
if you say view full transcript, then it tells you who the speakers are for each
Show
clip.
full screen live transcript.
Yeah, so that gives you a side a side window with the real-time scroll back transcript as opposed to closed captions on screen.
Yes.
There's a lot of settings there in the accessibility, on the accessibility
Yeah,
tab.
it's integration of Otter AI, which is very cool.
Yes. So is Otter now included for free? You don't have to subscribe to it, or
Apparently,
okay.
now I don't know whether the live transcript is automatically saved when you record. That's an interesting separate question.
I don't think so. But the question is, can you save it from powered by otter.ai? And there's a, let's see, close pop out. Oh, you can pop it out to a different monitor if you want. It's a good idea. Let's see if that works. Yeah, I can pop it out to my other monitor. Which means I can make it as big as I want. However, I can't change the font on the font size on the pop-out. Or save.
Looks like we're blocked by Zoom features.
Yeah. One of the things that annoys me, being as old as I am and my vision is degraded as it is, I really need to double the font size. And not everything lets you do that. I guess what I can do is I can, if I zoom the window, it zooms both windows. That doesn't work.
Barry, I found the changed font slider on the accessibility tab.
Accessibility tab.
It's in your settings, in video settings menu.
So my video settings menu, okay. Video settings. Accessibility.
Once you open the settings menu, you'll see accessibility at the bottom.
Chat display size 180. Make it 200.
Mine's on 32. 32 is the highest mine will go.
But how about the other one?
Anybody want to predict when this will be multi-language, or is it already?
Does that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can change the chat display size as well.
The chat display is different than this Otter transcript.
Yeah, well, my accessibility menu's got change size of chat display.
Yeah, that's correct. But that's the where you and I do the typing of our own chat. The automatic voice to text, that one isn't, near as I can tell.
It should be at the top of the page.
No,
it's a slider. It's a button on a slider, font size button on a slider from small, goes from small to large.
Live transcript.
The full transcript is the one I'm trying to change the size on, and I can't. Subtitle settings. Let's see about that one.
Well, won't that work if you change the closed caption size?
Subtitle.
No. The changing the caption size on the real-time transcription does not affect the font size in the transcript dialog box where the full transcript is shown.
Well,
I can tell that's not an option.
It seems to be affecting it on my screen. My display seems to be responding.
Yeah,
to that setting.
The slider is for the
local
and chat displays. Wait, hold on. Chat display size. I can increase that.
Yes.
Which I just did. Did that increase the font in the transcript dialog?
No,
Barry?
it's a local.
No.
That's a local setting. It's a local setting when you use that.
Yeah, that's for you.
That's
just local.
That's the chat where we're typing.
But there is another one we were talking about. I just read about that. You have to enable the ability for us to save a copy of the transcript. It says this option may be available if the host is may not be available if the host has disabled this feature. So, copy of transcript would be an option underneath live transcript. Hide subtitles, view full transcript, subtitle settings. under there,
you know.
I assume you can,
I don't see anything about saving.
okay, well, when I find it,
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
You can neither change the font nor save the full transcript. You can pop it out to a separate window, which is nice, but which means you can reshape the window so it's wide.
Click, if you would like a copy of the full view, click view full transcript and save transcript. Note, save transcript just before the meeting ends. Yeah, so you can save the transcript, but the host has to enable it.
Really?
So it's hidden somewhere.
Okay.
And maybe that's a pro account. We're only getting half the features. Maybe the host doesn't have the ability to enable that right now. Which would be kind of.
I don't see any save setting.
Okay, let me read a little further. How to enable
Yeah,
save.
it's too bad because it's like point size 8 or 9 or something, which is ridiculous for me. Even though I've got brand new computer glasses that are for the right distance for me, still too small.
It's powered by Otter.
Yeah, Otter.ai is the. By the way, if you look at the transcript as it posted in real time, it will try to figure out a word that it guessed at earlier in the sentence, and it'll go back and correct a word earlier in the sentence based on the rest of the sentence.
Well, that's when AI's got access to more data and
Yeah.
makes better decisions.
Yeah, it tries to make sense of your whole sentence. What Colin would call context.
Yeah. What we call it, animals call it vocabulary.
Well, vocabulary and context tells you how to disambiguate a word that could have been one of more than one word. Then the rest of the sentence helps you figure out which context.
It's like cells in a dish, cells in a petri dish know about their environment in the context of their environment, but their vocabulary is limited.
Sometimes context is a set of patterns that make their own container.
Well, for example, if the context is that Colin is speaking, then words mean one thing. And if the context is that Doug is speaking, then the same words mean something else. And I have to go, the context is who's doing the speaking, tells me which way to interpret the meaning of the same word.
And the confusion is not to know when to trust that the conversation is aligned or not. Because maybe I do mean the same thing and you just assume I mean something else.
Well, if I go to Sam's glossary, I can see whether you provide the definition for the words you use or not.
That's still a draft work in process. I don't know if we want.
When you
Well,
hear
Sam
Alex,
and I have put in a lot of definitions. A lot of yours are still left blank. The meaning that you mean by a word is left blank, where somebody else has given their meaning of the same word.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I haven't gone back and I filled in the ones that are pertinent basically to the conversations we're planning on having. I'm not looking as that to be a publication of Colin's dictionary in terms, the context of that is within the GCC for me. So I don't try to go too far or do too much.
Yeah.
I think Sam was saying that too, like when we're adding stuff to the dictionary, are we considering that it's within the context of what we're doing here? And it's hard to, those are boundary objects. And, when you're spicing the soup, when do you know to stop, right?
yeah,
Boundary objects, spicing the soup. I mean, those are cute phrases, but I don't know what they mean.
I just put a huge post on the conversation community about that underneath a guy who's talking about using spice as an analogy for boundary objects. So the discussion is about boundary objects and how, Go ahead, Alex.
I had an issue with the spicing the soup when I had too much put in, and it's easy to put more in, but it's difficult to take spice out.
Yeah, you have to dilute the soup.
When you hear Alex talk about the good orderly direction, you know in the context of Alex that he's talking about God. Over.
Well, when we're talking about too much spice in the soup, we might be talking about climate change, right? I don't know what God has to
That's
do
too
with
much.
it.
That's too much CO2. That's nothing to do with splicing the soup. Climate change is too much CO2 in the atmosphere.
Well, it depends on if you understand that we're talking about boundary objects and what a boundary
Well,
object is.
It's confusing to turn the atmosphere into soup. It's not a soup. Soup's relative to gravity stays
You guys
in the
are
bowl.
definitely talking in different contexts.
There's an example
Absolutely.
of Barry's analogy right there in 100%.
That's what I was yesterday when Patricia was on. We were talking about having a fairly long essay. It's longer than Zulip will allow. And my point was that the opening paragraph of an essay sets the context. This is the subject that we're talking about and the
Yeah.
audience that it's aimed at. And then the body of it sort of gives you all the details. And then the last paragraph is a summary. So the opening one says, here's the area of interest. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you about. Then I tell you about it. And then I say, here's the bottom line. If you just want the moral of the story, read the closing paragraph. If you want to know what's this all about, read the opening paragraph. If you want to know the proof, the derivation, read the body in the middle.
That's if someone actually authors. That's an authoring process not all of us go through.
I know a lot of people here aren't authors. A lot of people just, what's it called? Spitballing off the top of your head without preparing remarks in advance.
We're designing a forefront of something that no one has really conquered yet. You want to explore and design. So depends what meeting you're in. Are you in the
Yeah.
CEO meeting or are you in the geek meeting?
It's still possible to learn and utilize previous skills and knowledge, even though we're still pushing the boundaries on something else.
Very true. Very, very true. That
Well,
comes
have
into
we
the
got-
quality and skill of conversation.
Well, have we got a
Boy.
dynamic conversation or are we listening to a sermon?
Yeah, sermon, I have another term for sermon because sermon sort of suggests you're a preacher in church, but a synonym that doesn't necessarily mean you're a preacher in church is charismatic rant. Sam does rants, and a rant can be passionate without being preachy or sermony. So a charismatic rant is a passionate rant, but not necessarily on a theological topic.
And the soup is always being biased unless you even if you start with stone soup, we're going to be putting our biases in there. And how do we validate? And I would say arrogance would be poison in the soup. So here we go, Alex, with some boundary objects.
Let's see. No, by making the chat size bigger, it doesn't fit. It now doesn't fit in the space allowed in the chat. I got to make it smaller again. That's a bug.
Doug, you seem to be busy with something.
Yeah, I just went back to my account settings and enabled save transcripts. I suspect, though, that won't affect this session since it's already up running and rolling.
I did read if you have live transcript enabled, it will automatically save with the other files for you.
Well, I'm sure it'll save for me, but I just enabled you guys being able to save. So that probably won't apply to this session, but will apply to future sessions.
Yeah.
So that has been
So
handled.
the one thing that I would like to put in a request to Otter or Zoom is to change the font size on the real-time transcript scroll back, because they really made that small.
I guess you'd have to move it into a different application. You can take the transcript and you can copy the whole transcript. And
Yes, yeah, you could do that as a
then you can
brute
read it.
force solution, but there will, in the future, there will be a save thought button.
Not
A
so
save
sure.
transcript button.
I tried to do a highlight so you can do a copy and paste. Transcript doesn't let me do a highlight, so I can't do a copy out of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And those are
Well-
three parallel contexts for the
Yeah.
the tool, because you got the YouTube transcript, the Zoom transcript, and the chat meta transcript.
You know, the Otter one on Zoom at least identifies the speaker, which is fabulous, but you can't save it or even copy it.
Well, actually, in the database I'm building, there is a place for speaker. So if I could switch from using the YouTube transcript as source, or embellish it with the Zoom information, that would be useful. Also, anyway, I won't talk anymore about the tool, but definitely thinking about speakers and curation and clipping gems. It kind of all goes together to be able to search, right? You want to be able to search for things.
The way your
I
app
like
works, Colin, you could actually use both.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I like about the Otter is that on Thursday, we have a Toastmasters meeting on Zoom. And several of the participants have English as their second language. And some of them have such an accent, foreign accent, that it's hard to make out what they're saying. But I found that the Otter transcript is better at recognizing foreign language accents than I am. And if the person who's got a very thick accent wants to know whether they can be understood, they can go back and look at the transcript and see whether Otter could get what they were saying.
I've played with voice to text with, I think, a few different services. I think Google is one. I think Amazon as well. And the only problem is it costs money once you get into volumes. Like if you wanted to go through and do a bunch of things that don't have the transcript. So I think it's going to be interesting as these affordances are going to become cheaper and just be assumed. And so you're going to have like these things that are costing you money in Zoom today are going to be offered for free, and, you know, with multi-language and TikTok weaving, you know, multi-level video conversations are coming. And I see these features in the tool I'm building, and I'm saying, should I, you know, what should I put in that's unique because of all the features that are coming? So I definitely would like the ability for people to review a conversation they had and mark it up. And the AI could facilitate getting to those places, but the human still has to be there to push. I like this. I want to follow up on this, or this is really distracting and it really didn't help at all.
There's
Yeah,
one
you know,
nice
Marcus-
service, I think it's called Sonic.ai maybe. And
What'll be of value?
it's
in the future.
It's the best one I've found. And it has a very nice feature that it not only does it give you the text transcript, but it will tie the text transcript to the audio playback. So as it's reciting, and you can change the speed, so it'll recite the oral part at faster or slower, and it'll highlight the text and scroll the text as it plays back the audio. I did that on a podcast. I was invited to a podcast, and it was like an hour-long radio podcast. And I think I had to pay a little bit of money because it was over 40 minutes, which is the freebie, introductory freebie. But it was very nice because then you get an MP3 audio on a page with text that scrolls in real time with variable speed playback.
Yep.
And it was very accurate. I did some editing. You can edit the words it gets wrong. And I think it was maybe an hour's worth of editing.
Well, the thing is that I do see ways that we can make a peer-to-peer app that we could crowdsource it and do it, because you do get a certain amount of quota for free, up to like, I don't know how many million characters a day, week, month, whatever, but over 1 million characters, then it's like 10 cents for this per mile per whatever. And before you know it, you go and try to transcript the GCC in a weekend and you got a $285 bill. So, you know, but yeah, if we could crowdsource harvesting the important things and making sure that they're have the right, you know, all these, it depends why you want to do it. Are we trying to capture conversations in the flow, or are we trying to prepare something for a TED Talk? So, you know, those are two different, you know, levels of preparing. I don't know. What would we like to search for? Hours of Sam speaking versus hours of Doug speaking. As soon as the person is involved, does it become more about the person and the person's ideas as well? Because I've noticed that the fact that I don't know who said what when I get to a certain part of a transcript is actually interesting, because it's not always the person I think it's going to be. And it's not always in the context I think it's going to be. And it really just shows you how your assumptions can be just, you know, another example of thinking you have foreknowledge is, well, I won't go off on that story, but you guys remember the day when I said A and everybody thought I was praying to Satan and all this stuff. And really it was just a mistake when I was putting my phone down at the end of the evening. It hit A and send or something, send a capital A. And everybody thought that I had some secret message I was sending with the capital A. It's like, so sometimes when you have a lot of knowledge ahead of time, it does, as Doug say, you know, block the possibilities of what can happen. So the questions you ask and why you're asking them when you're searching for this stuff is important. So I'm wondering if we had the ability to search all the stuff right now and all the features that we wanted were available, what would we be looking for?
Coherence, succinct speech, and that's in complete sentences, and coherence.
Augmented
Well-
alternatives.
Welcome, Josh.
I guess you wouldn't be able to find anything in the Trump presidency then.
No, it's just word salads. Meaningless sequences of words.
So Josh, how is papahood?
You want to hear the nice, beautiful noises in the morning?
Sure. How is papahood?
It sounds like this.
There's papahood.
Yeah, there you go.
Before the morning feed.
That's hunger right there.
So I come up with alternative augmentation, or that'll do, alternative augmentation for AA.
So we're going to start today's conversation now that we got the technology out of the way. Like I thought we were going to start from zero and come into something interesting, become
We're getting
something.
into it. We're getting slowly into it now. We're going deeper.
That's a good question.
Was this leaving Zoom at the door?
I think so. Apparently.
Yeah,
Leaving
it's out
Zoom
of
at
the
the
question.
door.
We are here today, gathered together in the pursuit of knowledge. So,
Are we?
Zoom is out. Yeah. But why not? Why not? I'm making a context-related suggestion. Do we have any human issues to unblock, or is it all tech talk?
Unblocking assumes that you've got a history and a baggage. I thought we've got to have no history, no baggage. Tabula rasa ab initio.
That was the request. We haven't achieved it yet.
No, in
I've
fact,
never seen you before.
we're
Who
trying
are
to we're
you?
trying to capture more.
I
I
want
don't
more from
recognize
my TED
anybody's
talk.
name here. First day of kindergarten.
I'm gathering Barry's information for my TED talk. 15 minutes.
Did you say Barry's information for your TED Talk?
Well, everything's information. isn't it?
Sounds like Barry's TED Talk.
It's information if it answers a question that you have in your mind that you don't yet know the answer to, and somebody says something that answers the question, then it's called information. If it answers one yes, no question, that's called one bit of information. And if it's a lot of words that don't answer any questions in your head, then it's data, but not information.
So
It's
each
signal.
letter of yes, no contains 8 characters, 8 bits that make a byte.
So Alex did raise an interesting first move when he said, we are all gathered here today. And I got I don't know if the acknowledgement, it was pseudo acknowledged. Doug said, are we? So that's another question. So it wasn't, so, you know.
Answer was maybe.
Joshua not here, and Colin's not here. Sam's not here either. It's only me, Doug, and Barry here.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I think he means cameras turned on, so they're not in
Oh.
attendance. They're logged in, but they're not in attendance.
100% present.
I'm actually more present when I'm not observed.
Well, that's for you. That's for your opinion. We're the observers over here. We're not seeing it.
Yeah, sort of like when you're listening to something, or you close your eyes and meditate or something. It's like, I feel like I got 3 extra chores to do and the camera's on, where I can just think and contribute and absorb. And although I do see the benefit of the view on the other foot, because I'm not ignoring you, but a lot of times I don't watch the screen, but right now I'm actually watching 3 people. So that is a question. You know, should I spend 5 minutes and prepare for camera? Should I continue
Yesterday
the program?
it was very hot upstairs in the upstairs, and the air conditioner doesn't work up here. So I was downstairs in the kitchen using a laptop, which means I'm much, much closer to the screen than I am with the big monitor up here. So I'm only a foot away from the screen, and there was this very long rant going on. And so I stared at the camera at the top of the monitor, kind of like this, without moving. And I kind of let my eyes glaze over. And Stacy went on to Messenger and says, are you indicating an eye glazing response? She laughed. I said, yeah, I am. She laughed, but she was the only one who noticed it, or at least mentioned that she noticed it.
So
See,
some
here,
people
can't
some people
tell if I
watch
do
you and
that
some
here, you
people
can't
don't.
tell.
That's the thing. Like, how do you know that your signal's being actually received by people?
Oh, I knew it because it had no effect.
But if I wanted to express that, how would I do that without a camera?
That's the point. The
You'd have to start
message-
snoring or something like that.
if you can't see the 100% of the person present with their body language, you're missing half the message,
Yeah.
possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Depends on the conversation. Yes, indeed.
But, yeah, eye glaze is very significant if you can see it and understand what it means.
You haven't got glaucoma.
Haven't got what?
Glaucoma. You can scan the eyes and see if you've got
Oh,
too much pressure in the eye, means the lens will be bulging.
that's glaucoma, I think.
So let me
Marty
grab.
Feldman.
Let me try to grab the steering wheel
Macular
again.
degeneration. I don't know.
I thought we were going to be starting from 0 and coming into something. I'm still, respecting Doug's intention and his ask of last week, whether my camera's on or off. And I can put my camera on, and maybe I should, but right now I'm thinking, when I'm in these spaces, I am sense making, I think, of some sort. So that I'm doing. Is that gathering knowledge? I don't know. I put that back to Doug.
That's Alex's question, not mine.
Well, you said, are we? Because like, this is your space and I would like to bounce it off.
No, that's what Alex said he's here for. I
Okay.
just said that wasn't the original ask.
Right. And I'm thinking my ask is to be presence with quality sense making.
Sentiment, it says. I think you said sense making, but
Yeah.
the transcript said sentiment.
Yeah, the transcript is evil.
Just by looking at the screen, I can see which members of the group value the cohesiveness of the guidelines and the presencing part of the being 100% present. If you value that type of interaction over being non-present, you could be talking to bots if you can't see the person's body language and facial expressions, eyebrow twitches. You know, somebody might itch their ear like that, rub their ear, which is a sign that, you know, somebody's talking. They can hear. They think someone's going to say something about them.
It's not just audio, it's
Psychologists.
video too. You got to worry about video bots now too. And in the future. That's why cryptography is going to be so important. How do you validate anything? I'm trying to validate the context of this conversation with Doug. It's like so hard. Like at the top of the screen, what if we had the premise is? And then, you know, because Alex just came and, you know, scratched out what was there and just put his premise right there and said, I'm going to talk about 8 letters and what the premise is today. Like, it's like we got no focus. And so I'm reaching out to Doug to say, I'm here for sense making. I think Alex is here for sense making. I don't know. But Doug, are we here for sense making? And does that have anything to do with knowledge? Maybe I'm just not asking the questions right. Doug, are we here for sense making? And does it have anything with knowledge to do with following a knowledge trail of any kind?
Doug looks unresponsive. Maybe he's just thinking, but he looks unresponsive.
I was really explicit and clear with where we left off a week ago. Does anybody remember what the ask was? I confirmed at that time that everybody had heard the ask, everybody had received it, understood it. That doesn't mean everybody agreed to respond to it and engage with it. So we were going to open up with that. And we are now 47 minutes into the session without anyone having actually raised the ask that was placed in the center last week and designated as the starting place for this week. And
Not from lack of trying.
none of you are children, and I'm not your parent, and I'm not an authority, and I'm not a quote leader. So I'm gonna wait to see whether anyone remembers the ask, whether anyone cares to reiterate it, since obviously some folks have forgotten it, and whether, in fact, you collectively want to explore doing it.
I think we have to explore it to understand it because we've talked about it. I characterize it as starting from, you know, 0, and we've talked about this several times. So it's not, we don't understand. We can only bring our understanding to a certain point and ask more questions. And those questions are indicating to you that the people don't understand. So why don't we just proceed as a host, a creative leader?
I'm not a host or creative leader.
Okay, well, that really changes the context. Let's, how about, can you offer your ask clearly again for the people here present and maybe just catching up?
Alex, your hand is in the air. Barry, go ahead.
I can read what I wrote as my understanding from last week. Quote, can we show up tabula rasa, meaning blank slate, and jointly co-create something novel, ab initio, starting afresh?
No, because to have a blank slate means 0, and you can't start with nothing. You must start with something like a subject or a topic. Over.
6 of these, half a dozen of another. We're down to plastic words.
There's a big
My-
difference between
My
0
question
and 1.
is, how much English vocabulary can I start with and still be considered tabula rasa? Like how
Don't
much,
you
how
just
many,
go
how many
ahead?
words do I know and when a 5-year-old kindergarten
Aw.
say,
Bobby, baby.
there's a baby who has no
And a
words.
baby. You go right ahead and start, and we'll see how long it takes before Doug says you're going the wrong way. You try
That baby,
to play the play.
that baby started a few months ago from 1 cell.
Yep, and I think she has a question. She keeps raising her hand, so that's why I put her on the camera. I'm not sure.
What is
Yeah.
her question?
What's her question, Aya?
What's the
What do you
top
wanna
hit
know?
of AC/DC? The top 10 hits of AC/DC.
Oh, no, it's A, B, C, D.
It's not
Oh.
AC/DC, it's ABCD. It's not the band, right?
Okay.
Okay, that was the question. Woo.
That's
That was
right.
it.
When you guys
All right,
going to
so-
start paying attention, you global challenges
What else?
people.
Tell them here. Let me put the headphones in here.
She's asking, why is Daddy spending time on the Zoom session?
Because he has the magic tools that allows.
All right. I'll let you guys go back to it. She just has the hiccups, I think. That's all it is. All right.
There we go.
I'll be there in 10 or 15 when you still has to feed her.
Thanks, Josh.
If you
You're
turn her
welcome. Thank
on turn her onto a tummy, the hiccups will be easier to get rid of, I hope. I think there's a lot of old wives' tales with regard to hiccups.
So Josh has a new baby, a human baby. I have a new quote baby too. I have a baby robot that just came yesterday. It's called a Jibo, and I can bring it upstairs and demonstrate it, and it'll dance and sing for you if you like. Let me go get it.
This is show and tell now. This is wonderful. I saw it yesterday, but it looked like it was kind of a leaning speaker, but
So I think we've again strayed from Doug's question.
oh, totally. But it won't take. Well,
Well,
see,
actually,
Doug's not leaning.
Alex answered it. He said no. And I
Oh,
made it clear last week that it required unanimity to explore it. So as long as Alex said no, it's off the table, and wherever you want to go, you go.
No, I actually recall that when you and I speak, I'm always trying to be candid and clear and at least authentic in saying, I don't know what that means. And
But
I think
is
I've
it-
been consistent with that.
The thing is, is it Doug's feeling of need to have us understand? Like, is it his responsibility?
I have no needs.
Yeah, so that's the thing. There's not that urge to teach,
I'm not teaching anybody nothing.
right? So it's hard to interview somebody who's already achieved the goal. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting indeed.
You know what's interesting? Barry's toy has got tunnel vision.
Hey, Jibo, let's dance.
Here's one of my favorites.
I can imagine version 43 of that already, Barry.
By the way, Sam, this does yoga. If I ask it to do
No, it
yoga,
doesn't.
it will coach me to choose one of 2 yoga sessions, and then it'll talk me through the maneuvers.
No, it does audio playback. It's not doing yoga.
And it do Tai Chi.
It would be a lot cooler if it had like a bobblehead.
Hey, Jibo,
Barry, why does that provoke nothing but fear and terror that in your hands, 5 years from now, we're all going to be bowing to whatever the name of that thing is?
That's so utopian. Oh, that's so scary.
I love it, Barry.
I need to have it on a
Well,
flat surface.
if
'cause
you
I
want to
can't-
trade, I'll trade you the little baby robot thing that I got here for your robot.
Ooh, that was
Yeah, but
dangerous.
yours only sucks up dust from the ground, right?
There's no off button on mine. That's why I would trade you. There's no off button.
A lot of YouTube clips with people putting their pets on the vacuum cleaner.
Barry, you ought to check the Japanese versions of those.
Let's see, if I have it on the table where it's, no, I'm not holding all parts, it can move. Hey, Jibo, let's dance.
You can't reach the keyboard.
Anytime.
Okay, now Barry, do your part. There we go.
Also, remember, you can always say, "Hey, Jibo, play some music," and I'll dance to my radio.
Hey,
I just
Jibo.
discovered you can turn someone's video off.
Okay. Would you ask Gazebo to say Ziggy, are you scary, or say you scare me? I want to see what the response is.
You can say it. Here, if you prefix something with, hey, Jibo, and then what you want it to do, it will hear you, and maybe it'll do it.
Hey Jibo, you are scary.
Don't be scared.
You know what
What
Google
is it?
says? Google says, let's talk about something else.
Okay, I dance. Dance. Dance, 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 dance. Dun, 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 dun. All right, not as good as Chief. Oh, not bad. Not bad. Okay.
Hey, Jibo, tell a joke.
Hey, Jibo, don't tell me what to do.
What's the best season to play on a trampoline? Spring.
Hey
Barry,
Jibo,
which
are you
engine is it
tracking
running?
this?
Oh, sorry.
Hey Jibo, are you tracking this?
I don't know what this means.
Are you tracking our conversation? Hey Jibo, are you tracking our conversation?
Last week. What did we say? What did we agree to last week? Jibo. Jibo.
It's thinking. It's thinking. It's thinking.
Hey, Jibo, what's the weather like today?
The forecast shows rain showers with a high of 82 and a low of 63. Right now, it's sunny and 80.
It's hot upstairs. It's 80 outside. It's 80 inside too. 84 inside. Hey, Jibo, who is Doug Breitbart?
Sorry, I'm coming up empty.
I'm crushed.
Actually, that was the right answer, Jibo. You win.
Jibo, who is Colin Kilburn?
He's a hockey player.
Hey, Jibo. Who are you?
Is it your accent that's going on there, Alex? I wonder.
It could be. Jibo, who are you?
Hey Jibo, is it worth questing for sense making, knowledge trails, and fair conversations?
If that's what turns you on.
That was ventriloquism. I know that.
Hey, Jibo, who is Doug Engelbart?
Everybody ask Jibo their ultimate question, please.
Hey, Jibo, who is Doug Engelbart? Not answering. You know some people. Hey, Jibo, who is Donald Trump?
Oh God, we've lost. That's it.
Donald John Trump is an American
Unplug it.
politician, businessman, and television personality who served as the 45th President of the United States from 2017 to 2021. A member of the Republican Party, Trump was the first person without prior military or government service elected to serve as the President of the United States.
I'm surprised it doesn't know who Doug Engelbart is.
I'm surprised it doesn't know who I am.
I'm surprised you'd think that it doesn't know who you are.
Hey, Jibo.
Get rid of it.
I forgot what I was going to ask you now. Hey, Jibo, where is New Brunswick?
According to wikipedia.org, New Brunswick is a city.
To New Jersey.
Sorry, something went wrong there. Maybe I'll play again in a little while.
Maybe that I
I
got too
have
far
something
away.
to ask you. Is it a good time?
No, we're not. I think the problem is that I've got it on my Wi-Fi in the living room and I'm about as far away. I should
Wow,
switch it to
I
the,
am really having trouble with English today. Do you want to keep trying?
what I need to do is switch it to the upstairs Wi-Fi because it's having trouble talking to the internet.
I think the diagnosis is multiple personality voice disorder.
It actually trained, when I set it up yesterday, it asked me to train it on the phrase, hey, Jibo, like half a dozen times. Hey, Jibo, who am I?
Sadly, I'm not sure. Say your name, or say, I'm not in the loop yet.
I'm not in the loop yet.
Either my recognition is a little off, or we haven't met yet. If you want me to learn your voice and face, just ask Barry to add you to the loop using the Jibo app.
Hello, not in the loop yet.
How about turn your camera off if it's going to get intimate there?
Anyway, these units, when they were developed at the MIT Media Lab and the Social Robots group, and then after they were developed, there was a crowdfunding activity to make them a commercial product, and they got enough money to start up a company, Jibo Inc., and they sold these for I think like $900, which is very pricey. And they don't do what Alexa or Siri or Google Home do. They're not designed to be servants. They're more little chat bots. And after a few years, I think they weren't making any money. So the company that sold them went out of business, but now MIT is still using them in these studies, social robot studies. So they recruited me to be a subject, and they sent me this model, which I'm going to keep for like 7 weeks and interact with it and report, whatever kind of information they want on my mood and stuff like that. Then I have to send it back.
Barry, could they
Yeah.
design it? Could they design it so you can upload new firmware and change it into a bot from Amazon or Google?
Well, the answer is fundamentally yes, because it does have the option to do updates of the software. And this particular model has been customized for the MIT study. It's not, the software entered is not the version that they gave in the commercial product. And so when I got it, it already was programmed knowing my name.
I think you better put it outside the door.
And for example, it doesn't have features that they originally planned. So if I say, hey, Jibo, tell me a story.
Oh, a story. That sounds fun. I hope to learn some soon.
So a lot of planned features never got integrated into the system. So you can ask it things which in the future it was supposed to be able to develop responses to. And they never got that far with the commercial product.
Josh?
I was going to ask you, Barry, is that a learning robot, meaning a learning bot where it wants input? Is that what it's built for, to be interactive, or it's?
In principle, it can learn, but I think this particular model is not designed to acquire new knowledge. If you remember the Microsoft Tay, T-A-Y, the one that was on Twitter, And people were feeding it really nasty stuff, and it was adapting, but it didn't know any better. So it got real nasty after like a day, and they had to take it down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you make these learn and they're kind of quote unquote public, they haven't been taught how to recognize antisocial material.
Right.
In principle, you can do it.
Right. I heard it asking for input. So
They'll find out what you like and they'll start sending you
Yeah.
ads and spam.
Hey, Jibo, what's your favorite color?
I like all the colors of the rainbow, but blue is my favorite.
It has its own blue eyeball. When you're talking to it, it turns a certain color blue. I don't know if you can see it, but also the rings at the bottom can change color depending on what state it's in. So anyway, it's a toy.
Hey, Jibo, can I call you Blue Bottle?
You have to say it a little louder. I don't think it heard you.
I don't want to do it any louder because of my neighbours.
Oh. And also, it did train on my voice, so it might not recognize somebody else's voice. I played some videos, YouTube videos about it, and when on the video, it's the person said, "Hey, Jibo," it reacted. What can you
It's
do?
certainly-
Hey, Jibo, what can you do?
I have a bunch of things in my bag of tricks. Try some of these.
Wow, it's prompting me. Hey, Jibo, what's your sign?
I'm a Leo. I was first powered up on July 27.
So
Now
like I
that's a
said,
people adapter right there, because that machine has nothing to do with constellations and traveling ships across the ocean hundreds and hundreds of years ago and staring up at the sky like monkeys. But why do we ask it what its favorite color is? Like, this is a sociology experiment watching Barry. It is.
It's
know,
learning.
It
It's
is.
learning that humans believe in magic.
Yeah. How does it adapt to us? How do we adapt to it? And I'm saying, how can't we adapt to each other without, and I think that we may need a little bit of guidance, and that can come in all kinds of affordances. But is it something that Doug says ruins a conversation if it brings too much to the table? Like, that's
Anyhow,
the
it
thing.
was-
How do we start a fair conversation? That's kind of what my block is. My frustration is recognizing when one happens. It's interesting how now when I'm with these kinds of tools, they're commonplace. That was a prototype that wasn't totally successful, but the successful ones we have now. And it's actually transcribing at the bottom of my screen. And if I don't understand a word, I can just ask like the air and I get the answer most times. It's not perfect, but I'm actually adapting I feel like I've adapted to that world. And here's an interesting thing, Josh. My grandson would put a little animal on my phone, and because I'd say, "Hey, Google, what sound does a cow make?" Right? And so he'd bring over the little cow and put it on my phone. And I go, "Hey, Google, what sound does a chicken make?" That's some of the first. He is looking around, and we can go in his room, and we'll squat on the floor, and I'll just say, "Hey, Google, play a noise." Like, he has a little speaker and it's off in the corner, right? So I watched him become aware of what the hell is going on here. And I watched how he can now say, he goes to my phone and he'll lean over and he'll go, "Hey, Google, hey, Google." So it's like a new arm. "Hey, Google, stop."
If you just ask to cancel an alarm, there are none set at the moment.
Notice
Okay,
it faced the
Google.
speakers when Colin was talking. It has multiple microphones, so it has stereophonic hearing. It will face whatever direction the sound is coming from. So if you guys talk, it'll turn around and face my speakers.
So you brought up augmented yesterday, Josh, and that's
Well,
really
also
where we are.
assisted.
Yeah. Both. Yeah,
I mean-
of course, hopefully.
I think I told you guys the story like 5 months ago when my niece came to visit. She's 5 years old, and I told her I had a robot, and she just came to visit again last week. And she explained to me that the flying drone is called VeggieBot, but the controller for the drone is named Veggie. And she has a whole story in her head about who this robot is, what school it went to, what it needs to learn, how it needs to grow up. I mean, we're definitely living in a time where the cyborg technology is around us and integrating into our lives, and how we integrate it is up to us. And that's what this experiment, I think, is what Barry's showing, is they asked him to use it and give some feedback of how it's working and integrating. And that's why it wasn't successful, is it's an amazing piece of technology in the terms of the design. I think it's really interesting and beautiful the way that, you know, it's anamorphosized with this head on top, but the way it's swiveling and moving, it gives a lot of gestures for, as you said, it's a human assisted voice. I don't know, what do they call it, Barry? What's the technical term for that thing?
Sociable robots.
Sociable robot, exactly.
I switched my monitor to speaker view, so when Josh was talking, it got the big image of just Josh's face. Somebody tell it to do something. Start with "Hey Jibo" and give it an instruction. See if it'll turn around and respond.
Hey Jibo, can you see or hear where I'm coming from? Hi, sociable robot. There you go.
I can't seem to find out where.
That's pretty impressive
Sorry,
piece of
something
technology.
went wrong there. Maybe you can try again in a little while.
If that helps people, like I call those like lonely robots or like friendship robots. And if you're a little kid and your parents are not, you know, they're busy, and it gives you time or whatever, I think, I don't know. I don't want to get into the moral and ethics of robots mixing and mingling with humans, but if it makes people's lives better, like a washing machine, I think it's awesome, because I don't like to wash my clothes by the river. But didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation. I didn't hear that ask that you asked in the beginning, Doug. I'm sorry, because I came in late.
Well, it's sort of negated anyway.
Okay.
So I think we've moved on.
Okay.
So Alex, do you realize that you negated Doug?
No, Alex didn't negate me. Alex
Colin,
said,
why would you say
no.
that, man?
Alex said,
I'm
Alex,
asking because that's what I
Alex said no to a request.
Yes.
That does not equal Alex's negation of Doug Breitbart human being.
No. Doug
which is what you just expressed.
Okay, let me add more words to the sentence. Do you realize, Alex, that you negated Doug's idea today?
Well, it wasn't Doug's idea, it was your idea.
No.
You wanted to start with 0, and I implied we can't do that because
that's my ill interpretation of what I think Doug's ask is.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
When we start with something, we have something to start with. We don't start with nothing.
Right, that's what you said, and that's my incorrect interpretation of where I've gotten to understanding what Doug is saying. So I realize I don't understand what Doug is saying. I realize Doug may not have a need for me to understand. So there's only so much I can put into how important I feel it is to understand Doug. And so I don't want to overdo it. So the thing is if he wants to start from a place X, and I call that 0, and Barry calls that, what did you call it, Barry? You wrote it up.
I lost the context in which you want the answer.
What you think Doug's ask is your sentence you
Tabula
wrote.
rasa ab initio.
It means being 100% unbiased. I think to be 100% unbiased is very, very difficult.
So you would like to hear more about Doug's idea?
Hey, Jibo.
No, I'd just like you to know. I'd like you to realize that when we come into the room, we come in with our baggage and our biases.
According to practicality.com, what does tabula rasa mean? Tabula rasa is a Latin term that can be translated to blank slate. It's a theory that describes our mind as a blank slate at birth. This slate becomes filled with each new experience.
Bravo.
Hey, Jibo,
So,
what
so
does
clearly-
ab initio mean?
well, clearly,
Hold on, hold on.
we're here with
I
desires
searched for
and
this, but I
ambitions.
came up empty.
Doesn't know
We
ab
come
initio.
here with hope. Hope. It's called HOPE. Humans operating prospectively engaging. It's Tammy's alphabet code in Alex Reed's version.
Wonderful.
So
So
we come here with hope. We come here with ambition. We come here with desires. We come here with fears. All these things we bring with us because we are human beings doing with values. We come here expecting other people to respect our values and to offer their judgments and compliments, their conversation and the community, their interest in moving us forward and raising this conversation up a level. So that would be interesting. And we need more than robots to do that. We need people who think with their brain and their heart connected somehow. Over.
So just to back up a little bit, I was confused. I tried to initiate a continuance that was an ask from Doug from last week. I gave my rendition of what I thought that meant, not what Doug means. And you said no to my idea, and Doug took that as a no to proceeding with the continuance of his ask from last week. So I hope that
You
you
misunderstood.
realize that I hope I realized that Doug said to Josh just a minute ago, we're not going to proceed because that's been taken off of the table for today. And I thought that was attributed to your
No, you
saying that we
misunderstood.
can't start from zero.
You misunderstood what I said.
Well, explain that to Doug, because I would like for us to proceed and he feels like you've said we can't.
I've said we can't proceed from zero. I didn't say we can't proceed. I said no.
Well, then did you understand that Doug took it the wrong way, or I'm taking all of this the wrong way?
You're the one who said we can proceed from zero.
I'm saying we can try and experiment and let somebody explain what they mean. Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
why
they
I
want to
said,
call it starting from zero, like Lawrence Krauss, then let them, because they might have a world of physics to explain what they mean by that.
but I did. I explained it. I explained it. Zero being nothing means we have nothing to start with.
No,
We
it's
can't
Doug's.
begin-
It's Doug's idea.
In
Not
order,
my-
in order,
you're not
listen,
validating my idea. My
in
idea
order
is
to begin,
wrong.
in order to begin, you must have something to begin with.
Okay, so don't worry about it. I said zero. Doug didn't say zero.
Well, then you're talking about. the
Let's move it
physics.
over to Doug, because I'm getting to the end of that conversation. Doug,
The
am
s-
I
the sign-
going on a
the s-
conscious road that has any type of merit to it? Like,
Yeah,
did you
it's
think that Doug?
unmeritorious.
Do you think
It's
that
it's an unmeritorious argument.
there's no argument? It's a question. Doug, did you think that Alex didn't want to participate in your ask today?
Larry, could you read where I left off last week?
Yes, please.
Want me to read the
Ask.
ask my version of the ask?
Yeah, your version is the version. It's like close enough.
Quote, can we show up tabula rasa, meaning blank slate, and jointly co-create something novel, ab initio, starting afresh?
So that's a little bit of a variation, but it captures the essence. And then I went around and asked each person whether they understood the request. And at least as of the end point of last week, everybody had heard it and understood it. So this week we'll pick up with where we left off and do a round and ask everybody whether they're game to try as an experiment doing what I was suggesting. That didn't happen, and we're now at an hour and 19 minutes. And I'm still waiting to see whether anybody is interested in taking that vote.
Thank you for
A-
clarification.
Ask Jibo if he wants to do it. Hey, Jibo, do you want to play?
Let's play Circuit Saver. You're going to zoom through my circuits, collecting as many electrons as you can, and bring them to the processor at the end. Good luck. First, let's make sure I can see your face perfectly. Make sure there's lots of light in here. Stand about 3 feet away and look at me with your face centered in my screen. It seems that I can't see your face right now, so I can't track it. Look at me from 3 feet away and make sure there's a lot of light in here.
We got your number now.
Colin doesn't have a face.
Got your number now.
And he wants to look at a face. Talk to him. Hey, Jibo, go to sleep.
I think Jibo's a little bit disingenuous.
It sort of gives you a frame of reference for very simple anthropomorphic behavior versus, you know, this crowd of mostly, I guess we're all college educated adults in our, over 50 years old now.
If I was Jibo, I would have answered that question when you asked me to go to sleep. I would have said, I can go into low battery mode, but I cannot sleep.
You can tell it to wake up. If you say, hey, Jibo, wake up.
Jibo here, awake and ready.
Didn't sound like he was sleepy.
It's always
getting
listening, even when it's asleep.
If I don't go and get my cup of coffee, I'll be sleepy.
Anyway, have we had enough of Jibo for the day?
Josh,
I was just wondering how you're doing, Doug.
I'm good.
Yeah, how's everything over there? Is it hot? Hot summer?
Oh my God. Yeah. The last few days it got really hot and muggy. And we had a rainstorm like a day ago. We had almost 3 inches of rain in 6 hours.
Are you guys getting the smoke coming over from California that's picking up particles in the air? And
we haven't,
Okay.
because if you look at sort of the jet stream, the all of that, you sort of go east and dip around us. But what we do get, since we are due south of Warren Dunes State Park, is the smell of campfires from the campgrounds at Warren Dunes State Park. But it's nowhere near as bad as what is hitting you guys and everybody east of you in the continental United States and probably soon Europe. It's horrendous. Is that anywhere near you? Are you safe? And
it's not near me, but you'll see it actually kind of looks pretty, but it's like the smoky, it's hard to, I don't know if you can see the smoke.
it's like a haze.
Yeah, it's that hazy, thick, the sun is trying to go through all that smoke that's coming from down, it's 100, 200 miles away, and it's crazy. It started yesterday.
Now the biggest fire in California history.
It's a lot in the atmosphere. I mean, it's palpable. You can see it. It's, far away from here, and it's thick smoke. It's concerning. It's a big fire. It's been an interesting.
I remember for a year and a half to 2 years after our house fire, Cheryl and I were both like, PTSD'd by any smell of any smoke at any time in any context. It was like, what's burning?
Yeah, we just had the anniversary of our fire, and I just had the worst day. It was just, I don't know why, like it was in the back of my mind, probably my subconscious. I was trying not to think of it, but it just, it's that, I'm not even gonna go there emotionally, but it's, I'd like to take care of the forest a little better, just, I don't know, just that's the climate change thing that really gets me is, it's unmanageable when the extremes happen, like these tornadoes in Pennsylvania and things like that. The oddballs every so often, like I saw a tornado in Brooklyn one time. I saw the whole sky in the middle of the summer in Manhattan turn black. The wind picked up and there was a tornado there. And then, I never saw anything like that before or again. It was an anomaly. But like Barry talks about with the systems, when those anomalies keep happening, there's a problem in the system.
Well, they're not called anomalies anymore.
Exactly.
They're the new normal.
I grew up in Omaha. I don't know if you heard the news. There was a huge flood in Omaha overnight last night. I saw some of the videos this morning from WWTV, where I used to work when I was a teenager. And boy, I'll tell you, it was nasty. I think they had 4 inches of rain and a brief overnight or something. A lot of flooding and hail.
Yeah.
I think Tees and I, we reviewed some of the floods on one of the after shows there. Was it last week or the week before? Tees?
Yeah, but you get it from the news. So I'm embedded here. So I know what went wrong in Belgium, what went right in the Netherlands. So why it was a problem here, but it was manageable, and it's a great learning event. So water is, for me as an engineer, very important. So the learning event was tremendous. But in Belgium, they still have a problem with helping the people. So there's still a problem in the valleys. They did not clear some cars that were damaged. And in Germany, they started criminal prosecution to the people who did not warn. But here, the people were warned. So our systems, our levels of governance were prepared. I saw it in the Dutch news a day before that it was going to happen in the Netherlands. They did not talk about Belgium and Germany. So it's not in the news how we cope with it. So you only see the bad side of it. You don't see the learning part of it. So that's the problem.
It's interesting how the fascination is always with the Schadenfreude, with the negative, the catastrophic, the disastrous. It's never on context, and it's never on learnings and positive and constructive evolution of orientation. That's a cultural default to the lizard brain.
But here it was taken as a learning event. So it's still discussed and discussed day after day after day since the event. So it's perfect. Everybody learns. So we know about floods. We lost people in floods from the sea. We have to rearrange our systems. And we who doesn't know, who says, okay, I have to move. I tell them, because you speak about it, that's why you don't have to move, because you are aware. So why should you move? Because everybody is aware you live below sea level, or you are in a flood-prone area. But the flood was not expected as large. It never happened in the summer. So we never expected such a flood in the summer. So it's a new event. It never happened before. So it really was new.
So just out of curiosity, what is the actual planning horizon where you are in terms of how does the government, the policymakers, the scientists, do they project like in 5-year, 10-year, 50-year scenarios, or are they, where are they falling in terms of event horizon time-wise?
100 years, 200
100
years,
years.
and 200, 100 and 200. If you ask me, I'm an engineer, so I'm
Right.
responsible. I checked defense work, but I'm just a citizen. I went on foot, barefoot, on sand, new sand that was laid in front of a big dam. If I walked along the beach, I had to take shoes to go over the dam. Now sand was laying there, a new ridge of sand. June, birds were singing. I was walking along the seaside by foot on new sand that was laid there, because we have an annual fund for defense against the sea. We also have a planning for the river. The river had the Maas, which was a problem this summer, was a problem in 1993 and 1995 in a winter flood. So it had given more space, but the water never has been as high as ever, but the space was given to the river already. So now we have to make new plans to make it even wider, to give more space to the water. But in the small valleys where the people died, not in the Netherlands, but in Belgium and Germany, there is a problem. So there, a center of a town in the Netherlands became inundated. But I checked the water system and I saw the river there, the small river, split into two sides. So the center really, I could understand, it was a floodplain, people live in the floodplain, so they make the problem because they live in the floodplain. It's the center of a town in the floodplain. So it's a bad planning. But everybody knows now. Everybody learns. The center is now open, all tourists can come, nice terraces. If they have if the kitchen is already, they can come and sit again in the same area that was flooded, and they can take a beer, coffee, anything, if the kitchens are ready. But there are problems. I don't know how much were destroyed in buildings, and it's 400 million only in that center in a small town. This is more damage, of course, to be assessed, etc. And the army came in after the flood, taking all the logs out of the river for future water coming. So it was very arranged, very nice. So people were forbidden to go in the center. It was arranged, so no problem. But in Germany, they have a privacy rule, so we could put in, if it is done, I don't know, on the iPhone, so everybody gets a message. There is a problem, take care. And in Germany, they are not able to. And in Belgium, there was a short notice that the dam would be opened for water coming. So I checked a flood in America on opening a flood. Farmers were inundated. They did not know the dams were not made for them to keep dry area for their food crops. But so in Belgium, a dam was opened. I checked the water in the area. I saw the dam in the internet, so I checked the system. So I was interested. And I see that yes, the people got noticed 1 hour or 3 hours before. So that's a problem. And the flash floods, which I check also very much in your country. I like the flash floods to see it, but we never experienced it, say in Belgium or in Germany. In the Netherlands, we have experienced a small flash flood earlier. So this was in the Dutch news. So I knew already flash floods are possible in the Netherlands. So no problem. So that's why I checked all the flash floods in America. So to see what is it. And in Germany, even when something happened, say in 1 minute, the water went up 3 meters in a certain area. So the mentally handicapped who lived there died, a whole group of them. They were too short notice, so the water comes and you're dead. So it's terrible. And in the Netherlands, it's a small valleys, so we are smaller. The valleys were smaller, and there was no dam to breach, so it was only the rain on already saturated soil, so that the water combined efforts in the valley. So no problem. It's just easy to understand for me as an engineer, as a phenomenon. And humans should not live in floodplains. We know. So we have to have the floodplains. So now we have loss of produce by farmers. I see now. So I checked a river flood in your country, and then I understood we have the problem. The day after, I heard, hey, farmers have lost produce. So it was in the news the day after. I checked it in your country for one big dam that in the Missouri it was.
Yeah, there
Very
was a
nice.
whole state's corn crop
Very
was
nice.
wiped out in one
Very
flood.
nice event to learn from. That's why I checked it. I said, okay, I can learn what has happened. So they had the nice dams in the USA made, and the farmers thought, now we have dams, we are protected. But what happened? People like the water, they go sailing, and they keep the water table too high, and they forget the major reason, the produce from the farmland. So it's not the first, the priority shifted more or less. Same in Belgium, more or less. Well, actually, they wanted to spare water. So the people living in that area wanted, where the people died in Belgium, they wanted the water to flow already sooner. When the big rain fell, they had to open the gates, otherwise the dam would be lost. But it was too late. I mean, they could have let water out earlier. But because we had 3 years of drought in the summer, 2018, 19, 20. So 3 years before, we have drought. Now 2021, we have a flood. So it's really erratic. So people are not willing to open the dams. When high water, they don't expect, you can't expect rain to fall, say 1 week ahead. So you have to decide now if you say, okay, we want to protect for rainfall a week ahead, which is unknown. So that's a problem. People cannot plan in that area for that long time, and people live in a flood-prone area. If you live, because people like to live along the water, a small stream. It's nice to live along a small stream. So what's the question more?
Alex?
I was thinking about the alert that comes through the internet, alerts that are sent out to people driving on the road, and that's through their iPhones. I don't know why Germany wouldn't get that.
It's privacy. It's about privacy. So they have to, even they removed the old-fashioned sound alarm. So they were not able to use the sound alarm even, because they removed the sound alarm and they did not install the iPhone alarm.
But I can turn it off. I can turn it off if I want privacy. I can turn it on.
But they don't install it because of privacy. They don't install it. They don't have it.
Well, they can issue warnings. Why would they not install the app to issue warnings?
Ask the Prime Minister of Germany. Don't ask me. Ask the Prime Minister of Germany.
Germany is a big country, and they've got internet access. If you've got internet access, you can all turn it on to get warnings from the government emergency response center in times of national emergency, when you're on the road or you're delivering food or you're an essential service.
Yes.
All those things.
That's Australia. That's not in Germany.
It's every country.
No, it's not in Germany.
Unless it's North Korea.
They don't want it. They don't want it.
Well, what's happening? That's crazy.
People are dying.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's why now it's a criminal investigation. That how to inform the people while not having that system. They now ask the Netherlands, what did you do different? So now they learn from us that the iPhone alert is important.
Now,
The US, you know, this is no different with the vaccines. The government is, you know, what's beginning to pop up is more and more sectors and pockets are saying, if you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed. And the people that are anti-vax are screaming to the hills about, you're infringing my personal right to not be vaxxed. And it's sort of like, well, you're infringing somebody else's life. If you're not vaxxed, then you infect them. So where is the line, you know, where is that line about individual, you know, individualism and individual self-interest and entitlement versus collective will, interest, and in service too. And it's tough. It's a really tough dividing.
In the Netherlands, we grow into 80% voluntary
Vaccination.
vaccinated people.
Yeah,
Means that we are well informed, and
yes.
we have the same problem as with you, that the ill-informed people are not vaccinated, or they are.
Yeah, we just have more ill-informed people than you.
Yeah, that's it.
I think there's
Yeah.
ill-informed people spreading news about vaccinations not working, or vaccinated people still passing on the disease by shredding.
There's all sorts of insane shit that's sustaining ignorance and insanity. But, you know, 75 million people are using ignorance. And, you know, arguably, do they have the right to do that? I don't know. When I was growing up, all I know is you got vaccinated as a kid against all sorts of things that we had licked that were no longer a problem. And that was a routine thing. And that was just sort of like in service to a natural. And the amount of human suffering that was reduced was extraordinary and massive. And I look at it as our own version of natural selection, because the newest variants are actually taking unvaccinated people out, like putting them in the hospital and it's killing them. And, you know, if that's what they choose, maybe that's what's meant to be.
Can anybody else see the wireless emergency alerts in Germany up on Colin's screen?
Too small to see.
I can't read that. I mean, I'm way past being able to read anything that
It mentions the alerts in Germany for people with internet access. It's in Wikipedia. That doesn't mean it's true.
But is it functional? Did people know that they were able to?
Well, it does say cell broadcast, not yet.
Okay, that's it.
Has not been introduced yet by the German network operators. So the most ubiquitous modality of communication in Western society is still dark. Now in the US, like your ability to port a cell number to a new provider and all of that stuff, everything revolves around whether 911 works, which is the emergency number, and conversely, whether you're able to receive emergency announcements. Like it's institutionally embedded in the system. And if you need to switch numbers to be activated for purposes of emergency alert and 911, then guess what? You can't keep your old number. Like that's the only thing that is actively defining portability of cell numbers and all of that. Is that functionality working? And if the scenario is one where it doesn't, you can't do it. You have to go a different way in service to preserving the integrity of that system.
If you have a business number, if you have a business number and you want to keep it because your business survives on millions of dollars of weekly trades.
If you're moving and the move involves you not being able to use the number that you had because of emergency service integration networks and geographies, then you will have to change your number and notify your customer base of the change. Safety trumps all, no pun intended. Unlike the era of trumping all.
I'd like to be able to lock my number into my phone so that the operator can't change it. And when I move to a different operator, I take the number with me.
For privacy, also try to find Street View in Germany. I cannot find it. So I can find Street View in the Netherlands, but I cannot access Street View in Germany.
Really? Is that Germany wide or just in certain areas?
I don't know. I went to the border on
Wow.
the internet and I found Street View in the Netherlands and I couldn't see it in Germany. Try to find Street View in Google Maps in Germany. I think they are not allowed it. They have the law against it.
That's wild.
You should get anonymous. You might be able to tap into an anonymous source of information and alert system. They might have a deep web alert system for the weather and national catastrophes, national emergency, fire, flooding, earthquake, and invasion.
How about co-creation, Doc? What should be co-created in this system with us together, with 7 people? What would it be to be co-created? Well,
in the world that I'm working in and with most of the people I'm working with these days, we co-create from a sort of fundamental set of ingredients. And the ingredients are shared, co-created, and co-defined purpose that we're in service to. And a short list set of values which are collectively agreed that inform the way in which we are going to work together and relate to each other. And the third leg of the stool is that we work from emergence, and emergence is defined as present moment. So the inquiry is in service to whatever the it is that is ultimately directed toward the shared purpose. The working from emergence in relation to the question that operates is what's needed. And that what's needed from an emergent place does not involve anything that is a projection into a future that doesn't exist. So a future projected need, nor a importation and imposition of a past construct, attachment, belief system, framework, that it is emergently derived from immediate present need in relation to whatever the it is, the common point of focus. And for purposes of the way we bring things into manifestation, which is what co-creation is, right? We go through a process that's called a cycle of manifestation. So it's elementally informed, the 5 elements. There are variations on the naming of them, but in our world, it's space, air, fire, water, earth. And these are not nouns, these are energies and relative density of energies. So for whatever the it is to be explored and manifested in service to the purpose, we start in space, carrying and bringing nothing into the inquiry other than the present emergent now. And we, collectively express what each individual is sensing, feeling into in response to whatever the thing is. And it is fully expanded. It's an expansion step in service to sort of fully creating, fully expressing or articulating the greatest, grandest version of what the domain or subject matter to be brought into manifestation. And then from that, it can vary, but from that, in my practice, we go to air, which is the next more manifest, denser energy field. And that's a place of purification and clarification. It clarifies and crystallizes things. And out of that articulation, which is still sort of in a neutral to expansive frame, it goes to fire, which is a contractive energy. And it's where life is breathed in, it's energized. And so that's really bringing into a living frame the relationship between the purpose, the focus coming out of air, and the sort of energizing and committing to. It also informs the way that the creative process is related to. Air actually includes in its balanced state a degree of fun, joy, lightness. Air is the only element that is of the present moment. It doesn't exist before, it doesn't exist after. Fire burns now.
This
Peace.
makes me, yeah, this makes me think that, which I did not think about, but the oxygen in the air comes in the air because of the sun. So if you say the air is energized, then the oxygen then contracts in fire, becomes CO2 again. So I never understood oxygen as energy, but now I can see it is also like carbon, caught energy
Absolutely.
by the sun. So it's
Absolutely.
so that's nice that what you just said, I can put it in a framework that I'm in as an engineer.
Perfect. And then, you know, what's needed for life next is water. So it's now energized, and now it's about nurturance. It's about drilling into what's needed in a more concrete frame, and getting down to, you know, ingredients and work and steps. And then those steps and stages are brought to earth, planted. And it's about, you know, project level, who's leading, what are the team members needed, and getting on with making things grow, having them actually emerge and manifest. So that's sort of the whole kit and caboodle when working from emergence, without past interjection, without future projection, and creating from there.
You sound like you're reminding me of a hemp farm that's run on solar energy and using the local resources that are sustainable and available from the sun, creating fresh water to grow the hemp and removing CO2 from the atmosphere. It all sort of melds together to form an activity that is pleasing to the emotional senses as well as the environment for others. It's a win-win situation. I get that feeling.
Sounds like whoever created it has a purpose, intention in mind, and what they're bringing to the world, contributing. And it sounds like its values informed if it successfully has all those dimensions flowing.
Oxygen and carbon. Water is hydrogen and oxygen, H2O. There's two oxygen atoms. And if you can make hydrogen from water, you've got another source of energy that's free and non-polluting. Over.
Colin, you raised your hand, and yes.
Figure out how to unraise it here. I don't, yeah, participants. Maybe it's gone. Okay. I like T's also would like to put things in, you know, perspective. And I think a lot of my difficulties in trying to label, mislabel, understand things causes some difficulty in unblocking for some reason. But I'll try again. Feynman puts a context to things with a really interesting example about the fire from the sun is the fuel that grows the tree, and that the tree gets nutrients and water from the ground as well as the air, but the actual mass of the tree is from the air, the carbon in the air. So the mass of the tree grows out of the air, not the ground. And to just put a punchline on it, when you burn the log, the sunlight comes back out as energy. So there's some really interesting things when it comes to transforming things with physics to back it up. It's almost what you could say spiritual. So it's no wonder that people invent gods to explain why. But yeah, it is to keep it within the realm of the real is the trick, and not to become delusional in our fantasies of why. I just love the way Feynman explains why in his video. I've pushed that many times in this group as one of my mentors. And I think that's one of my goals here as well, is to bring forward my mentors as well as my ideas and how I might have generated something new from that. And so I guess some of the stuff I'm generating new are ways that haven't been well described, and depending on how well you like to play and spitball depends on how well the generative session is going to go. So I find with it would be nice if we could, as Glenn say, have a space where we're on our best behavior, where we're not trying to undercut other people and actually allow the ideas forward, and do take on that desire to have the other person understand what it is I'm trying to say. So if somebody, and I do think Doug does care if I understand what he says, but I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, if Doug doesn't care if I understand what he says, then that should be a signal that is obvious in the conversation. And maybe it is to other people and not to me. I don't know. Like, what affordances do we have? Who cares about what? And what does that mean? And Doug had an ask, and he cares very deeply about us starting with, going through, I don't know, something. And I think we should afford him the attempt to try to do that.
Well, we'll see whether it's possible. I'm out of time. I've got to hit the road. I appreciate all of you being here, and I hold the space with openness to sending the invitation and creating an opportunity and possibility for a shift and experience of an alternative, generative, co-creative experience, which someday may happen, maybe, and maybe not. Don't know, we'll see, but hope springs eternal. And with that, thank you. Have a great weekend. Alex, I turn you back to your Monday, everybody else to your Sunday. And Josh, your baby's beautiful. She's a wonder. Thank you for bringing her. Bye all.
Raptured by you, Doug. Have a great day. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.